He knocked me over. I landed on the dog bowl.
This one's wife. I was sex trafficked. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. You will be aware that this one's wife engages in mirroring and also one-upmanship. These are standard narcissistic manipulations which are designed to assert control over the other person by appearing to be just like them. Although the narcissist walks and talks and breathes air and goes to the bathroom and eats food, etc., there is a fundamental difference that you have come to know as a consequence of my work, that the narcissist, when dealing with another human being, pursues the prime aims, and that leads to all manner of differences with regard to the conduct and behaviours of the narcissist. Mirroring somebody else is a narcissistic manipulation that is utilised for the purposes of bringing that person under control by creating an affinity between the narcissist and this particular victim. The one-upmanship is because the narcissist cannot stand to be outdone by anybody else. It cannot be the case that you are allowed to better the narcissist in any way. And therefore, you invariably get a combination of mirroring and one-upmanship, whereby the narcissist will take something that you have done, claim they have done it also, but have gone a little bit further, a little bit more, sometimes a heck of a lot more. We saw an example of this in the recent episode of Confessions of a Female Founder, where, in order to assert control over Whitney Wolfe Heard, this one's wife mirrored her with regard to the claim that she had suffered from postpartum preeclampsia. The evidence suggests that that simply didn't happen, and therefore this one's wife engaged in a revision of history for the purposes of mirroring her guest, but also going a little bit further by referring to it as a battle and rare and scary. She simply cannot help herself when it comes to this. As I've mentioned before, if you go to Tenerife, the narcissist will go to 11erife. If you talk about the fact that you've got a foreskin, the narcissist will tell you that he's got a 5-skin. The narcissist will say, I've got a television like that, but mine's better. Mirroring and one-upmanship. This one's wife can't help herself when she does this. It is a knee-jerk, instinctive response. She doesn't think to herself, right, I'm going to also claim that I experienced postpartum preeclampsia. Even though I've never mentioned it before, Harry made no mention of it in his book Spare when talking about the birth. Therefore, that would lack credibility. Fuck it, I'll do it anyway. That doesn't enter into her head. What she does is instead claim that it happened to her also. And she's utterly convinced of it because her narcissism tells her it was so. It tells her that this was the case so that she is driven by utter conviction. So she says it without any sense of irony, any sense of guilt, because the narcissist doesn't experience guilt, and with a completely straight face. It's done because she needs to get that control and that fuel. And therefore, by mirroring that individual, it allows her to come out with something similar to what that person has done, thus creating an affinity to bring them under control and promoting the provision of fuel by way of their response. There is no restraint on this behavior. She has no sense of self, and therefore the narcissism takes these shards and aspects of other people by virtue of what you have come to understand through my work as character trait acquisition. So much of what this one's wife you gain understanding of right here, because I've been talking about narcissism for years, and ditto her narcissism. Want to understand what she is? Watch my videos. Want to understand why she does as she does? Watch my videos. Want to understand what she meant when she said something? Watch my videos. Why does she touch her hair so much? Watch my videos. Why does she use a death stare? Watch my videos. On and on. And we've seen another aspect of her narcissism, which is the utilization of mirroring and one-upmanship, which will also be combined with the telling of a lie and a revision of history. Now, she has got other guests lined up for Confessions of a Female Founder. We don't know who they are yet, but I'm going to invite you to ascertain what she's going to mirror from her next guests. Remember, she'll have invited people on that will be perceived, and may well actually be, successful women in various fields, because her narcissism believes that she's just like them, thus the mirroring. The delusion of her narcissism tells her that she is a peer of these people, and therefore by appearing with them, people will believe that she is similarly fantastic. She wants these people on her show because it aids with the seeking of the prime aims, but at the same time, the show has to remain about her, which isn't a very good way of being an interviewer, because you're meant to take an interest in your guests. The only interest that this one's wife has in her guests is how they can serve her purposes. So as we saw in the cookery show, each guest was there simply to tell this one's wife what a brilliant cook and party designer she was. Similarly with the podcast with Whitney Wolfe Herd, I suspect she was simply telling this one's wife what she wanted to hear, but that was the whole purpose of her attendance. She wasn't there to look good, to outshine this one's wife. That's not permitted. She's simply there to provide a platform for this one's wife to bang on about the things that matter to her, to make her look good, to make her look important. And part of the way that she does this is by stealing aspects of her guests and then trying to go one better than them. And therefore, do not think that this is the end of her mirroring activity, because we're going to see plenty more of it with outlandish claims. And I put my mind to perhaps some of the outlandish claims we might hear. For instance, this one's wife would probably tell us that she was abducted by aliens and they gave me the ingredients for my raspberry spread. Remember, I told you some time ago that when Catherine, Princess of Wales, was ill, that this one's wife would at some point come up with her own health scare in order to bring the attention back onto her. And she has. Possibly later than you might have expected, but there it is nevertheless, that she experienced a health scare with regard to postpartum preeclampsia. I told you she'd do it, and she did. And she's going to be doing more of the same, because she can't let other people have the limelight. Accordingly, she'll probably have somebody who will come on and talk about the fact that they've overcome difficulties with perhaps alcoholism or being a heavy drinker. We know that this one's wife is a day drinker, and she'll probably tell us that she once drank so much that she was pronounced dead. And then go on to say, I once drank so much, I was pronounced dead, but I was resurrected, and I saw God, and he told me to continue with my good works because the world needs me. It'll probably be the case that somebody will claim that they get inspiration from certain historical figures, which has motivated them to succeed, that they've perhaps learned lessons from things that people have done in the past. And similarly, this one's wife will then go on to tell us that she's the reincarnation of Cleopatra, Florence Nightingale, and Diana, Princess of Wales. Another guest will undoubtedly explain that in order to have got to the top of their particular field and profession, it meant making sacrifices, one of which was 8 hours worth of sleep, and that they would often go to bed late and get up early in the pursuit of their dream. This will mean that this one's wife will tell us that she gets by on 4 hours of sleep a night so that she can ensure that she's a girl boss, also a hands-on mom, and an empowered feminist. Somebody else will say that they came up with a brilliant idea which they perhaps didn't see through to the end, or they passed on to somebody else. And then we'll learn that this one's wife actually invented Tesla, but she gave the idea to Elon because she's essentially modest and she wanted the planet to be saved. It'll be the case that somebody will talk about what their company's now valued at. And this one's wife will suddenly explain that she has received a valuation that, as ever, is now worth $1 billion. It'll be the case that, similar to Elon Musk, who reads a lot, one of the guests will explain that one of the aspects of their success has come from the fact that they read a lot of books. And this one's wife will tell us that she once read War and Peace, Paradise Lost, and the complete works of Shakespeare in one day. Somebody else will talk about how they had fantastic ideas that they had written down, that they had come up with various ideas. Maybe they're a writer and they talk about what they've written and how often they would write. And this one's wife will explain that she actually wrote Harry Potter before J.K. Rowling did, but she wanted to concentrate on Suits, so she decided to let J.K. have her moment instead. There might be someone who comes from a sporting field who talks about all of the effort and endeavour they've placed into that. So this one's wife will explain that she was once scouted by the LA Rams, but she wanted to concentrate on the TIG, so she had to say no to them. It's likely that another individual will talk about having undertaken some feat of endurance, and from that they developed mental steel and resilience, which will prompt this one's wife to tell us that she once swam across the Gulf of Mexico when she was at college, and that she killed a shark with a single punch to the nose. It will be the case that somebody will explain that they gained inspiration from the world of fashion, which will prompt this one's wife to tell us that she actually designed an award-winning range of corduroy evening wear, which she then sold to Stella McCartney under a pseudonym. There'll also undoubtedly be somebody that will talk about having had an abusive childhood, or that they were in toxic relationships and that they've overcome those to become the success that they are today, which will undoubtedly lead this one's wife to explain that she was actually sex trafficked and made to work on a yacht, but that she managed to overpower her guards and swim 4 miles to safety. And thereafter, she's used her experiences to set up women's shelters across the United States to protect the victims of sexual and physical violence, whilst also overcoming those inherent problems that arose from her being held as a sex-trafficked victim to become the girl boss and empowered feminist that she is today. On the one hand, naturally I'm taking the piss, but there is a serious aspect to this, that what this one's wife hears from her guests in effect serves as a threat to control because it makes them sound better than she is, and her narcissism cannot allow that to happen. And so what it then does, it causes her to mirror the experience or the history of that guest by way of character trait acquisition, but then to add something more to it so that she can outgun them, outflank them, outmaneuver them, out-bullshit them. Let me know what you think she'll come up with in forthcoming episodes of Confessions of a Female Founder, by way of mirroring and also competitiveness and one-upmanship with regard to her guests. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.